everybody, Farmer Luke here.
Hi, I'm Lauren.
We're actually going to show you how to make a wicking bed this week, which is really exciting. It's a little bit outside the box, but funnily enough, inside the box. That's a good one. And we're going to show you how to upcycle common household items in your house. Things that normally go into your rubbish bin or your recycling. We're going to show you how to repurpose them and to build a wicking bed nice and cheap and nice and easy. And it'll be something you'll be able to grow your seedlings and your veggies in for many, many months to come. Alrighty, so we've got our lovely little wicking bed in the making here. So Lauren's going to show us how to assemble the base layer. So this is where the water will kind of live and be separate from the soil. So pretty simple here. We've, like every good cooking show, here's some we prepared earlier. We've gone ahead and cut some of these containers and bowls into various shapes, and we've had a little play around before. So she's going to put them in here. And all you're looking to do here is just create a little bit of space that will allow water to flow through and create a little bit of height in the bottom of the container here. Because the way the wicking bed works, and you've seen in the diagram, you've got a layer of some kind of structure, scoria or containers, and then a fabric layer that stops the soil from going through. And the idea behind the wicking bed is, as the name suggests, the soil will wick the moisture or wick the water up from the bottom up towards the roots. So basically here, this is about 1/3 of the height of the box, and the other 2/3 will be soil. So that's what we've done there. Pretty self-explanatory. Again, it doesn't need to be perfect. This is kind of just figure it out as you go. You might find some containers don't quite fit and you might need to cut them. That's fine. I think Lauren's done a great job.
As long as it's kind of roughly level, we're going to be covering that with a fabric or something that you can use as a barrier between the soil that's above.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be perfectly level either, because having a little bit of variation in that height actually works really well, and we'll explain that later. So that's the first layer done, and we'll take it to the next bit. Cool, so what do you got here, Lauren?
Okay, we have here a little 10cm piece of poly pipe. And this is going to be the overflow, the drain pipe for the side of the wicking bed. So
you've all been provided this in your kit. So we're going to show you what we've done here. Prior to the video, I just made a little hole here in the polystyrene box. I just used a drill, and thankfully I had a really large drill bit to kind of hollow that out a little bit. You can also use any kind of tool around the house, a knife or something, just to bust through that. So I'm just going to put the hose in now, and pretty simple. You want to make sure the hole is slightly smaller, so it's a really snug fit for the drain. So just through there, and again, it just needs to be enough to go into the box there. You can see there, it's just in there a little bit. And then she's going to secure that with some tape. And it's important that you do have like a watertight seal, because obviously you don't want it leaking around that drain. Like a little bit's okay, just depends where you'll be setting it up. So I guess at this point it's important to note that I'll be setting this up outside, and if you have a veranda or an outdoor area, we'd recommend that. If you're going to do it inside the house, like on sort of like just a normal living room or laundry, something like that, and you are worried about spills, we'd recommend lining the bag, lining the styrofoam box with a watertight bag of some sort at this stage. So put that in first, and then build your scoria up, and then your soil and everything like that, just in case there's any leakage. That's pretty good. Pretty happy with that. Now the thing we're looking for here is this is about 1/3 of the box height. So we're not going to give you measurements because all your styrofoam boxes will vary slightly, but the rough estimate is about 1/3 of the box height for the water layer, and then 2/3 for the soil layer. And this is a nice kind of mix between having enough water volume there to keep the soil moist, but then also having enough soil and growing medium to allow enough root growth and to support the plant. So you see here, about 1/3 from the bottom, in this case it's sort of like a hand width or so, but pretty simple. 1/3 from the bottom, that's where you want to pop your drain, and we'll take it to the next step. What do we got here, Lauren?
So the next layer we need to put in is the barrier between our reservoir and where we're going to put the soil. So we've just got some Chuck's wipe here. You could use anything, any kind of fabric, like an old t-shirt, a tea towel, or a pillowcase that you don't need anymore. The idea is that it's something that you've got lying around, and it just needs to be something that's fabric, and something we just want to lay on top of our plastic.
Yeah, cool. So we'll do that now. And basically what this does, this stops the soil from falling through into the water layer, but it allows the water to soak up through into the soil. So it's kind of like a one-way kind of system here. And this is really simple. Like, we really like using Chuck's wipes because They're really cheap. You've probably got a roll of it under the sink somewhere. You can even use the old dirty ones as well. So when that one's wiped a few too many bench tops and it's not quite sanitary anymore, maybe give it a quick little rinse out and then use it for your wicking bed. So you see here, again, it's kind of like in the hemp actually. You want to make sure that it just covers all around to the edges and all the way up the corners. And that's because you don't want any soil to leak around the outside. And one thing we will note here, remember we had the drain here? The drain has to be underneath the layer of the fabric. That's probably the big takeaway from this, because you don't want the water height getting above into the actual soil itself and having the soil kind of constantly sit in like stagnant water. Obviously, once the water reaches the level of the drain, it will flow out of the box. And so that's a bit of sort of gravity and water dynamics 101 there. So once the water starts flowing out there, the fabric on here is about there. So the soil is going to sit about there. But because it's not exactly level, you see there's some like low points here. This is actually perfect, and that's why it's really good to use odd size containers. So these little bits here are going to be like almost like little wicks, and hence the name of the wicking bed. There'll be little bits of soil that'll be slightly lower than the rest of the soil, and that'll actually tap down into the water a little bit. So those will be the points where the soil will make direct contact with the water, obviously through the fabric, and then you will be able to bring that moisture up into the rest of the soil, and soil being soil, it will sort of permeate through the rest of the soil and keep the entire soil bed moist. So that's our wicking bed foundation done. Now, with a wicking bed, it's very, very important that you water it from the bottom up, not from the top down. And so in order to do that, you need a pipe, basically, that goes directly down into the water reservoir. So what we have here, Lauren, is...
It's an old milk
container.
An
old milk bottle, yeah.
Yep.
So, and what I've done here, I've cut the bottom off because I actually want to keep the cap intact so we can keep it sealed, because you do want to keep that pipe down into the water reservoir closed off unless you're filling it up with water. So this is kind of the perfect little... You do at home little funnel without any other attachments. So just cut the bottom of the milk container off. Again, you could use a soft drink bottle. You can use some more of that black like poly pipe or any.
You can use an old hose.
An old hose, gold hardened hose. Yeah, some PVC pipe you got lying around. Then the only thing here to be really mindful of is Lauren's going to pop it in now. It just needs to be, again, like sealed really well. So we've made a little cut, a little slit in the fabric here, so it kind of tucks around neatly. And you can also get a second piece if you wish. Now we'll fix this up, it's kind of off camera, but what we're looking for here is just to make sure that seal around the edge of the box is still complete, so no soil can fall through. So that's the kind of like style you're looking for. Again, it'll vary depending on what container or sort of inlet you've chosen. But we've gone with a milk bottle route because I had one lying around, and it's a nice way to upcycle that instead of sending it out for bin night, which actually is tonight. So, I'm basically saving this from going to, another recycling center or potentially landfill, depending on what your council does. So, a great way to upcycle and save rubbish from leaving your house. So make sure you've done that, get a little inlet, and the key to the inlet is it just needs to go below the fabric or the material line directly into the water reservoir. And then that will ensure that the water goes straight into the water reservoir, not into the soil itself. Okay, cool. All right, now the fun part, we get to put soil into the wicking bed. So my trusty assistant here is going to grab some soil, and I'm going to talk you all through this bit. So the key here is to do it very slowly, and you want to do the edges first. So by doing the edges, what you're doing is getting that kind of fabric layer just snug tightly against the wall. And then from there you can kind of go a little bit more heavy-handed. So you just want to use definitely by hand at this first stage, and then you can bring out the shovel later on. And what you see here, she's just keeping that bit of the fabric or the material up against the side of the wicking bed there. So this basically gives us a tight seal the whole way around. So you kind of want to pack it in there even. You can sort of use your fingers to smush it down. And we're just going to keep doing that. And all the way around. And probably the most important part will be around the inlet pipe. So when Lauren does that, she just wants to make sure she supports the pipe as she does it, and then tucks that in and really gets it in there snug. So again, we've got a round one, which, round bottle and a square corner doesn't quite fit exactly right, but that's okay because we can use the soil to kind of get into those little crevices. If you've got another pipe, most of us will be using sort of round pipes anyway, so this little bit here is pretty key. Just get the soil and just pack it in there nice and tight. You can see here, this bottle's pretty snug now, so it's not going to move too much, and that's what we want. We don't want it to be moving around and potentially open up gaps to the water reservoir layout. Now again, this won't be perfect. You'll have the little bits of a tiny bit maybe sink through here and there. That's okay. We're just trying to avoid large clumps of soil going into the reservoir. So as you can see here, this is pretty much the point that you can start building the layer. So what Lauren's done is she's covered to all the edges and all the way along. And we've got a really nice sort of almost like a seal, if you will. And from here, we can start to just more heavily handedly kind of put the soil in. So we'll continue to do that off camera because it'd be like watching paint dry. But we'll just fill that up with soil. You can see here it's going in a bit more generously now. And then from there, we'll get to the top and we'll show you kind of how to finish it all off. Alrighty, here we go. Through the magic of television, here we have a fully soil-filled wicking bed. Notice we've left a little bit of a lip around the top there just to allow us to eventually mulch it if we wish. This is always good practice. You don't want to fill it right to the top. And also, I guess for us, another thing to consider was the height here of our sort of inlet hose or bottle. So if your bottle's taller, then you can probably fill the soil level up a bit higher, but we didn't want to like cover it because the risk here is once you take the lid off, we don't want any soil going into that water inlet. So we basically made a wicking bed, which is pretty cool.
It's all done.
Yeah, but the point of a wicking bed is to grow things. So here are some seedlings that I got from my local neighborhood urban farm, Pocket City Farms. They're some friends of ours, and they're down in Camperdown in Sydney. They're an old bowling green that now is a working market garden. So these are some lovely sort of winter veg. We've got some bok choy and some lettuce, some chard. There's some spinach in there. So I picked these up the other day. A little bit cheating, but in future I probably would raise them myself.
And you can do this. Sow from seed.
Sow from seed as well. So how we showed you to do the chard the other week, you could do very similar here. So here is us just basically planting out our wicking bed. Now with anything like this, it's really important to space out the seedlings. So Lauren's kind of doing a little diagonal pattern here, which is very common in sort of market gardening. So they have room to grow in sort of all directions. And these little wicking beds are perfect for this kind of vegetable. So think winter greens, think bok choy, pak choy, kale, chard, or I think I've got a beetroot seedling in there somewhere. And stuff like that. They're going to grow at different rates as well. So you can get a nice little succession going. So the beetroot will take the longest. It's about sort of 14 weeks. Radishes, if you can plant radish seeds in here directly. So we call that direct sowing or direct seeding. And radish can be harvest ready in sort of 4 to 6 weeks. So that's quite a quick turnaround from seed to harvest. But yeah, this is really cool. I'm loving how this looks. Lauren has done a killer job of the planning out.
So this is the spot where we water.
This is the spot, yeah. So that's probably pretty important. So basically, I have a watering can down there, and this is really key. Now, I know we don't top water, but when you do plant, you will want to quickly just water in the things that you've planted. So Lauren's going to do a little splish around each seedling, but just a little bit. This is just to get the kind of roots established into the soil there. But
also, this potting mix is very moist.
So this
already.
potting mix is quite wet because it is winter in Sydney, and I do keep my potting mix outside, so it has absorbed a little bit of moisture over the last few weeks. So we don't really need to water this too heavily. If it's dry, if you pick it up and it's all crumbly, you definitely want to water it until it's moist. But this is the key bit. So what Lauren's going to do here is just fill the reservoir. And so this is just visualize it's going through that milk bottle, and the bottom of this milk bottle actually emerges underneath that fabric layer. So it's kind of coming out about here now. That's where the milk bottle kind of ends. And so the water is now going to fill up from the bottom up to about this point. Now we won't do it now, but eventually you want to fill it to the point where it starts to come out there. And once it comes out there, you know the water level is at this height, and you've basically filled the reservoir completely, and the soil is kind of coming down here. And so the soil will be touching the top of the water there, and you'll have this nice little wicking effect. And so by that, the soil will start to draw up the moisture, and then it'll keep itself nice and moist. And that's what the point of the wicking bed is. It allows the soil to kind of water itself as it needs, which is basically stop you from overwatering. Because often when you top water, the water just runs straight through and then out, and then the garden bed kind of dries out very quickly. So with a wicking bed, it stays constantly moist at the rate that it needs the moisture. It's sort of like a self-regulating system. So it's kind of very hard to over or underwater it as long as you keep that water reservoir full. The soil will take up the moisture that it needs when it needs it. So the wicking bed kind of helps take some of the guesswork out of that. Alrighty folks, we've both got the cowboy hats on this time, so you know what time it is. It's the end of the lesson. Thanks so much for tuning in. Thanks Lauren for coming. We're really happy with this. I can tell by the smile on our faces. It looks great.
Can't wait to watch these guys grow.
Yeah, me too. Hope you've enjoyed this lesson today. Please jump onto the group and send us your photos and your videos of you growing it. Otherwise, yeah, hopefully it's been nice and explanatory and really helpful for you all. And we hope you have a lot of success with it.
And it's a great way to use up all things that you could be throwing out and
absolutely
recycle, reusing, and you get to keep it and replant and keep on growing.
Great activity to do with the kids as well, for all the family in the cohort out there as well. So we've had a lot of fun. Hopefully you guys have too. I've been Farmer Luke.
Farmer Lauren.
Until next time, happy growing, and we'll see you on the farm next time.
See ya.